Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining J-Teen today on another really relevant, we think, webinar that we're offering for professionals working with Jewish teens. I am extra thrilled about this particular webinar because it is being led by a good friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine, who I actually met like 15-ish years ago through the Nachas pre-J-Teen network. And we have stayed in touch and lived in cities close to one another for a few different times over the years. So I'm thrilled to have, and I get to introduce her as Dr. Robyn Faintich. That was actually the most exciting part, who's here to present with us and have us really engage around the topic that you see on the screen, parents as partners and learners. You can all read the subtitle included. So without further ado, my friend Robyn.
Thank you. I'm very excited, very excited. The doctor thing is new, so that's why Erica's very excited about being able to use it, but I'm thrilled. It's done, a 10-year journey. So I'm glad you all are here. As Erica said in kind of this non-recorded chat, we had put this on the schedule long before the COVID pandemic changed our lives. So as I was, really thinking about it, I'm gonna do some hybrid things. These are things that are best done in person. These are, we don't know what the fall is gonna look like. I saw that somebody in the chat box already asked, are people gonna open in the fall? Do we think kids will sign up and pay to be online? The world is still very unknown of what the fall will look like. And so I want to give you tools that, will help in both situations. But just know that as you're thinking about it, you might have to say okay, if I adapt this, how do I adapt it for virtual? And I'll try to, you can, wherever we are in the presentation, and this is a conversation that I'm facilitating, stop us, raise your hand, wave down Erica, chat to Erica. Erica's going to look at the chat box. Don't be afraid to stop and ask questions along the way. Don't be afraid to be like, hey, Robyn, I don't agree with you. I'm totally open to people giving feedback and challenging my assumptions. That's what this is us learning together. So I just invite you all to do that as we go. We're going to start out. One of the things that I think is so crucial in professional development is time to talk to each other. So we're actually going to start out with 2 speed share rounds. Erica's going to break you out into pairs. You're going to have 2 minutes. I'll give you your topic in a second. You'll have 2 minutes, so 1 minute per person to share. Bring you back together to the central room and send you back out to a different pair for a second round of speed sharing. And what I want you to share with each other are what are your current, I'm going to call them parent as partners, successes. What successes have you had in parents as partners in education? Is there any questions about your assignment? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, so nobody questions? Okay.
Before you're interacting with the teens a lot, so you're not surprised by certain attributes or personality traits or different things, which I've never thought of, so I thought that was really helpful.
That's great. And Leslie, do you do that by intake form, or do you do that through phone calls?
So a lot of it is depending on summer camp forms, but I find what's helpful is when parents are more forthcoming with information, because when they submit camp forms or registration, they're doing that typically October, November, and sometimes the program's not until July or August. Mm-hmm. And so a lot can change. And so you want to be there to best support the teen. You want to have the best partnership. And so I think it shows when a parent is more forthcoming that they're ready for the partnership.
Great. Okay. And I want to share, Zipporah and I were in a room with Sherry, and she mentioned that because of COVID, a psychologist that she works with suggested that she focus on relationship building with the parents. And so individual calls were made to 130 households, and the trust that gets built. And, we kind of talked about it's a lesson learned that post-COVID, we need to be thinking about how do we have those individual parent conversations as well, whether it's done over the summer, whether it's done periodically through the year. I think that's a great learning. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the screen share here. And so what I wanted to start out is that it was interesting because Zipporah mentioned also in a breakout that her teen board was talking about they wanted their parents to be more involved because they thought it would help with other recruitment. And a lot of times when I talk about teens and parents, the first reaction is that I get from colleagues is kids don't want their parents around. Kids, the teens don't want to be engaging with their parents. They don't want their parents, to be in their lives, whatever. But the data actually shows something different. So I'm going to two sets of data. One is this article from Psychology Today, and I'll make the slides available. I can send them to Erica and she can post them or email them out. That parents of teenagers directly, consistently influence their teens. One is by role modeling. They're leading by example. The kids are watching very closely what their parents are doing. Another is when parents teach either intentionally or unintentionally, they are instilling knowledge that the kids are taking in. Whether the teens want to push back on it, that can be, but they are taking it in. When parents, particularly with teenagers, use self-disclosure. When I was a teenager, I did this. I made this decision and I regretted it. I had this experience and learned from it. That the parents ante in helps build trust and give lessons through their own experience. That parents do persuade their kids. They can convince them if they give them reasoning. Instead of just saying, because I said no, that's not helpful, but this is why, and here's data or information, or here's my own experience, they can convince them. They inspiring to their own kids, motivating them and becoming coaches. I know something Erica does is this lens of parent as coach. And a lot of people are starting to do that around the country. And so that idea of how do I coach them and encourage them? A lot of times the teens just want empathy. They want to be heard. They're not looking for an answer or a resolution, but they want to know that their parents empathize with their struggles rather than a parent saying, don't complain about it, get over it. That through empathy, there's a connection built. And that parents showing that commitment, that it's unconditional love, I'm committed to you, I will do whatever it takes to help you, be there for you and support you, that these all greatly influence and shape teens. And so we have to be mindful that how can we as educators help parents do all of these things intentionally? How are we communicating with them? What programs are we setting up? What conversations are we having with them one-on-one or in small groups in order to elevate their conscientiousness that they are doing all these things? And I think it's hard sometimes for parents to think about each of these individually. They're just trying to get through a day. And so it's up to us to help them think about this model of influencing their teens. Data is clear. 3 out of 4 teens say that parents are the biggest influence on their decision about alcohol, drugs, also falls as substances in general. That parents who discuss it with their teens, talk about the dangers, set up the expectations, 3 out of 4 teens, 75%, admit that their parents are the biggest influence. The same thing about decisions with sex. Parents underestimate the impact they're having on their kids, their teens' sexual decisions, but they are still the largest single influence on adolescent sexual decisions. The third is career choice and vocational development, college choices, that kind of a thing, that even though a teen has their own passions and interests, they're heavily influenced by their parental guidance in these areas. The conversations that parents have about making their what problems in the world do you want to solve? What challenges in the world do you want to solve? Where do you want to make a difference? What are you passionate about? What are the different pathways for you getting to your end goal? Parents are still the number one influence in this area. And then there are 2 that I put up related to Judaism, because that's what we're about, in addition to all these life things, is that the family is the number one most important setting for identity building, meaning making, for being a Jew, period. So if that's the case, us taking teens out of the family unit and only working with the teens and never working with the parents means we're actually not having the biggest impact we could be having. So we have to engage family and parents in order to elevate that identity building in the family setting. And the second quote, again, is the prime locus of Jewish meaning is the family. There's lots of quotes about whether it's Christianity or Islam that parents have the biggest influence. So questions or comments about this, data that we can't ignore the parents. We can't take the parents out of the equation. More than just we need them to drive them for the younger kids, right? Questions or thoughts or comments about this?
I was just going to say that I think this is wasn't the same 20 years ago so much, and I think the teens' relationships with their parents are much different. I'm in my 50s, and I know like my mother always comments on like the way I parent versus how she parented, and she never asked where I was. Maybe they were still influenced a little bit, but I think it's changed. I think teens have their parents as their best friends sometimes, and I just think it's something really important to lift up, and I'm glad you're doing it, because for me it's very different from when I was a kid, and I see that with my own children are grown, but we have a very different relationship.
It's a good point, right? And how this changes. So this data is all within like the last 8 years. So I guess the one is 2012. So it's within the last decade, this data has been consistent about the parent influence. So great. Okay, so knowing this, the question is then what do we do? How do we engage them? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is joint teen parent programs and different methods for those. I want to say that these are best in person. If you're going to attempt to do these virtually, it assumes that the family has more than one digital device in the home, and that there are times that teens and parents can be on separate devices in separate spaces. So just, your own populations, whether or not that's realistic, whether that's a false assumption about financial security or access. So I just want to say that a lot of these are doable, but it is an issue of needing multiple devices. So there are several different ways that this can be done. One is in a workshop setting, you start out with teens and parents in separate spaces, talking on the same theme, but particularly to their demographic market. And then you bring them back to the same space for processing, but you never let them sit with their own families. This is a key piece of the methodology that I've used and believe in about teen parent programming. I'm going to talk about why in a minute, about why you have them process in a mixed family environment. Talk about that in a minute. The second is the teens and the parents are in the same space for some opening experience, program, activity. Then they separate for processing, and the processing is done, on their specific demographic viewpoint. And then they come back together again for some sort of mixed family project output, again, another processing element, but now they're back together. And again, mixed meaning teens and parents that are not their own teens and parents. A third method is teens and parents where everything's mixed. You do a mixed introduction activity, they stay in the same room, they do a mixed project, you do processing together mixed. That's the third one. And the fourth one is where they're with their own families, that it is a true teen parent family experience, and they are sitting with their family the entire time. Those are best done, in my experience, when there's some decision making that the family needs to think about together. So for example, in a philanthropy environment, right? How does our family give? That's not a discussion for parents to be having with somebody else's teens about how much are we going to give and how do we give. That's a family decision. Or ethical wills, right? If you're going to write a family ethical will. If you're going to talk about how our family addresses arguments in shalom, through the lens of shalom bayit, and we're going to set up a code of conduct for our family when we're in distress, that gets done as a family. But all these other kinds of things that we tend to talk about with teens and parents, I fully believed in the mixed. Why? Okay. One is that we start with parents as learners, right? And sometimes when parents are with their own kids, they're more focused on what their kids experience. Like if they're looking directly at their kid, they're more focused on how is my kid reacting to this rather than what I'm taking in. So it's good to think about how do we set up parents as learners in our programs. When you do joint teen parent programming, parents are actually role modeling that they themselves are lifelong learners for their kids. It goes back to that Psychology Today article that they're role modeling. They're the example for their kids. You providing opportunities for parents to be those sharers and those storytellers. That goes also back to that Psychology Today article about parents self-disclosing, right? So giving parents the opportunity to share and tell stories of their own experience. Giving opportunities, you have to think about as you're creating these, what opportunities am I giving the teens to be the teachers? Am I prepping them in a previous session, program, etc., for something they're going to teach the parents? Am I asking a specific question that the teens are the experts in the answer? Am I doing an opening program, separate teens and separate parents, and therefore I'm giving the teens knowledge and experience? It's going to be different than what the parents are experiencing, and when I bring them together, I'm going to have the teens impart that on the parents. So how am I giving the teens an opportunity to be teachers in this? When you do teen parent joint programs, you give the teens and the parents a shared language and a shared experience. And that in and of itself is a powerful moment. That they can go home or leave an online virtual teen parent program and have a language that they can discuss something that they didn't have that shared language before. Or an experience that they both had that they then can talk about. One of the key pieces of this separate, you have to sit with somebody else's parents or kids, is two philosophies. One is the idea that it takes a village. If you're trying to build community, having the kids in your community have multiple adult role models that they connect with is actually, there's so much data out there about the impact of the number of adult role models that kids connect to being success for their overall well-being. And therefore, if you have them only sit with their own families and only talk about things with their own families and they never interact with the other adults in your community, you're limiting their opportunity to connect with other role models, other adults, other viewpoints. And again, a lot of kids won't say things in front of their own parents that they'll say in front of other parents. So it actually opens the child's voice. On the flip, having parents hear from other teens, they walk out, well, my kid's not so crazy after all. Like, oh, that teen sounds just like my teen, and I'm hearing it from multiple teens. So it's not just my teen, there's something to that. And so we want to create those opportunities for teens and parents from different families to really dig deep together, to build that community, build those extra relationships, and your teen is not so not. In addition to standard Jewish topics, we have an opportunity to open the door for tough topics that parents are often uncomfortable talking to their kids about. Sex, drugs, alcohol, domestic abuse, dating abuse, consent, tattoos, piercings, you name it. A lot of times our ability to open the door for the parents and the teens to have a conversation on these tough topics will make the difference in the world. Some of these parents will never bring up these topics to their kids, ever, unless we introduce it. So you think about all the top, whether it's, marijuana as a medical use versus, thinking about, animal rights and vegetarian, whatever it is, like we can open that door for the family to have a conversation. And somebody mentioned, I think it was, can't remember who, Dania, somebody mentioned the tough part about, without the virtual car ride home, like if we're doing this virtually, there's no car ride home, right? So if we're doing this in person, imagine that the teens and the parents were at different tables with different people. Now the car ride home is, what did your table talk about? What did your group talk about, etc. So it even amplifies the car ride home even more. If you're able to do this in a virtual space with teens and parents on separate devices in separate rooms, you can still help facilitate the virtual car ride home. Because now they've still been in different breakout groups with different people. They didn't hear each other's conversations, and they can come together that night at dinner, for example. We're all stuck at home, and you could actually provide a virtual car ride home discussion guide to say, like, when you're at dinner tonight, talk about these 3 things, right, from your groups today. and you can actually literally provide that for them. So I'm going to stop here. Questions, comments, thoughts, pushbacks?
Yeah, Robyn, I was even thinking as you were talking, you know, I know that we're not all in love with the whole Zoom space, but the fact is that that's where we are right now. And there are lots of families that are having Shabbat dinners together with family members and friends from all over the country. Why not even take an opportunity like this to connect 2 or 3 families and schedule a meal and a directed conversations or some topics of conversations? Now you're creating levels of engagement between and amongst, you know, congregants if you're in a congregational setting, or parents that are never seeing other parents in the same organization because they're simply dropping off, that you're now really broadening that community by giving them virtual opportunities to connect in a space that has less, you know, dinner. Like, it's more relaxed. It's less, you know, it's not formal.
Right. Excellent. And Erica, you bring up a good point. When I do these things in person, so let's say I'm running a Hebrew High program, right? I actually build in teen parent programs into the curriculum 4 to 6 times a year in the building. And I actually, typically, if it's a teen parent, if our time has been in the evening, I build in a potluck dinner beforehand, right? Always dairy vegetarian, or depending on your organization's kashrut policies, you have to figure that out. But having you know, a potluck opportunity and having people come together for dinner ahead of time, and I had not thought about, in the virtual space, assigning 3 or 4 families. This is brilliant, Erica. Like, assigning 3 or 4 families to their own Zoom link. They have dinner together before the program virtually, and then everybody does the program virtually, and, you know, or an after dessert, right? Everybody does the program together virtually, and then you assign 4 or 5 families to different Zoom links, whatever. It's brilliant. I hadn't thought about that. Great. Other questions or comments about teen parent joint programming? Make sure we have nothing in the chat box. Nobody's raising their hand, flailing around. Okay, great. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, we're gonna try something that Erica and I experimented yesterday with, and it's annotation on a graphic. So you should be able to, in your toolbar, see a thing that says annotate, right, Erica? Right? They should be able to see things.
So you may see it under view options at the tippy top if you wave your cursor at the top of the Zoom screen, and you'll see there's like percentages of screen size. If you continue to scroll down, you'll see the word annotate. You can just click on annotate, and then that annotation toolbar should pop up.
Okay, so what I want to make sure is everybody can get to there. So what I want you to do is look at these 3 photos. These 3 photos represent 3 different kinds of families that might attend. There are multiple kinds of families, many, but I just picked 3. I want you to annotate either in words or graphics. It's up to you. Pick one of the 3 photos. What challenges might this family unit have in navigating teen parent programs? Or I'm wondering how this family might. So either I recognize that this is a challenge. I think we have a chat box thing.
I'm just telling people. Yeah.
Okay. So either I'm wondering about how this family might with this program, or these are the challenges or questions I think this family might face in a teen parent program. So let's give it a minute or so for people to pick one of the 3 photos to annotate questions and comments on. Arnie's working on something. There he goes. There's also a text thing. So if you're trying to write something, there's a text one. Okay. The mom and daughter wearing the same thing. Erica. It's the exact same thing Erica noticed.
Yep. Okay, so there are a couple people who don't see the annotation. If you're not seeing it under view options at the top, maybe
Sorry.
That's okay. Maybe it's in the more section in the bottom. Oh, Leslie, I see you got in. Okay, you're good.
Right. So as people are typing, I'm going to kind of respond to them. So things like, you know, if one child's angry, they show up angry to a program. You know, if we separate the parents from the kids, there's an advantage to that, right? Because the anger that they're having towards their parent is not brought into the same discussion table. They're not stuck sitting next to their parent for the next 2 to 3 hours. They can kind of walk away from it a little. They're going to still feel it, but they're not focused on it the same way as if they had to interact with their parent. The idea that you know, children are not being scrutinized if they're the only focus, right? So one is that it appears to be either the only teen in the family at the top picture, or the only child in the family. And again, if somebody's an only child, the parents being able to hear from other teenagers, it's a benefit. The idea, the family at the bottom with the 2 dads, families looking like themselves. So there's a couple things. One is to ask yourself, I'm about to post a blog having everything to do with this, about, do your program materials represent diverse families? Jews of color, people that look different, physical disabilities, etc. 2 dads, 2 moms, whatever. And also, how is engaging families with diversity also an education experience for the families that are typical, like are heteronormative, Ashken normative, whatever, and then hearing how a different family structure, how they function, and how that could be a learning experience for the parents as well. How do we elevate that? And so making sure that's, you know, highlighted as well. I just want to check the chat box here.
Yeah, Robyn.
The second family, how to engage a family if there's only 1 teen in the family, right? Right, so and think about the second family, if it's a single mom or the other spouse is working and you show up to a program where you have to sit with your own parents and your own kids, and you can't tag, like, again, having people split from their own families, it's an advantage because other parents are there to help that teenager, you know, rather than I'm alone with 2 kids, right? And how do I tackle that? Okay, great. Again, just things to think about. And when we think about family compositions, we have to consider these different family compositions when we're planning teen parent programs. Okay, other questions or comments, challenges people want to make to that? Okay, moving on. Erica's going to pop up. Did the annotation stay? It did. Erica took care of it. Okay, Erica's going to pop up a poll. And we're going to switch from programming to communications. And there are 6 questions for you to answer and submit. And then she'll put up the results.
All right, it looks like people are starting to vote, so thank you very much. We'll hang tight for just another minute or so to give everyone time to get their voting in.
Are we doing our results, Erica?
We'll give maybe another 30 seconds. We've got almost everybody.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Weekly emails before sessions or programs. Most of us do that. Whether it's weekly, if it's consistent, if you have a once a month program, you're sending it once a month. It's not assuming that everybody has weekly programs. But in an interesting flip, the majority of us don't send them after, like as follow-up emails. So I want to particularly focus on that. In terms of holiday resources and activities, the majority of us do not send home holidays, resources, and activities. We're going to focus on that. Suggestions for conversations with teens. Most of us either don't or sometimes do to prepare. So or rarely. So very few of us do that. In terms of post-event sessions, follow-up, like so again, 60% either never or rarely send post emails saying, these are the things you should ask your teens, and we'll talk about that. And the majority do not share resources, disseminating links, articles, social media via text messaging to parents. Okay, so there's a lot of growth opportunity here vis-a-vis communication. So I'm gonna close that and move on. Okay, so these are examples of 6 bullet points to share pre-session, pre-program, whether it's weekly or monthly or whatever. This is the content that we're gonna be focusing on. This is how it fits in with our overall learning arc. I want you as the parent to know ahead of time, X, Y, and Z. It could be, there's going to be a discussion, there's going to be a guest speaker, there's going to be something that might trigger people, etc., whatever. Please share with your teen the following. I want to give you an example. I was doing a session with my confirmation kids that I teach on journeys, and we were looking at the story of Jonah. And I wanted the parents to share with the teens this idea of self-disclosure, a time in their lives where the parents, had made a decision that they didn't think was going to impact anybody else, but drastically impacted a friend or a family member. And then when we got to the story of Jonah, and we talked about Jonah and the people on the ship, right, and the impact on the people on the ship, we were able to draw back to the experiences the parents had shared about times that they had made a decision that impacted other people that they weren't expecting, right? And how our own behavior, we might have to think ahead. So I enabled the parents to do that self-disclosure and tie it to the curriculum, right? So in my pre-email, I said that, if you have assignments, this is the assignment I want the teen to do before we come together. Send with your teen, hey, we're gonna be doing this research thing, please send a tablet, please send, a laptop, whatever, or we're going to be doing a social action project, please send these art supplies or these foods or, to donate, etc. So these are the pre-session emails. The post-session, I always take photos and videos when I'm working in any group setting. So that I can send, so if the kids say, and I try to capture the teens hyper engaged, right? So if they say to their, we all know this, they get in the car, what'd you do? Nothing. What'd you learn? Nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Okay, so one is I start out with a year by telling the teens, by the way, I'm emailing your parents before and after every session. They're going to know what you learned, and they're going to know it wasn't nothing. And they're going to see photos and videos of you doing not nothing, right? So there's that. I send post-session links to all the videos, handouts, articles, photos, etc. that I've used with the teens so that the parents can see them after the fact. A highlight, an essence. The following debate, conversation, hot topic emerged as a result of our explorations. The teens are struggling with this, either conceptually, metaphorically, emotionally, etc. Ask your teen these 3 questions about what they learned today or they experienced, and don't forget the future schedule is X. We're canceled next week, we're starting late, there's a parent program, etc. Comes after. In addition to the pre and post program weekly sessions, other emails and text messages to send. One is this personal introduction ahead of time, and Sherry's concept of like those individual phone calls are really, if you could do them. I've even talked about home visits, like if a teacher can do a home visit, they've got 12 teens in their program, what you see in a home tells you a lot, right? And you can build that relationship and build trust. As an educational leader, communicating to the parents, this is how and when I want to be communicated with. Please text me between these hours. Please don't call me. Please email me. Please use this email address. Please use this cell phone number, whatever. Please don't contact me on Facebook. Setting up those boundaries and explaining to the parents what are your policies and expectations for them and their teens for the year. If you're going to change a theme, a unit, a semester, always doing an introduction to the parents. We're about to start this unit. This is the general arc of the learning we're going to be engaging in. Same thing with the wrap-ups. This is the end of the unit. Here's the overall emerging ideas, big takeaways. Sharing simchas and sorrows from your community. So-and-so kid is getting an award. So-and-so parents, brother died. Again, it builds community to share the simchas and the sorrows. Links to related content for parents and for teens. So if I'm talking about peaceful coexistence in Israel, and all of a sudden an article comes out about a program, I can send the link to that article midweek or a text message to the parents midweek. Hey, last week the teens and I talked about X and this article came out or this news clip came out. And here's a link that I want them to see, right? Or this celebrity did this and it's related to the content. We're talking about being Jewish and proud and, Adam Sandler just wrote this new Jew song, right? Wanted to make sure you saw it, right? And so here's a link to the content. In addition to the content, you and your educators are teen experts. You can send, and I encourage you to send information to the families, to the parents about teens, right? About a new trend in drug use that nobody knows about yet, that you've heard about. Or this is how to deal with COVID in your teen. There's an article in Psychology Today that I saw. Here's a coach. Here's a parent learning session on dating violence. And even if you have nothing to do with dating violence in your entire curriculum, be the teen expert and push that content out to the parents. And the last are holiday resources for what I call customized home rituals. Before I get into details about customized home rituals, are there questions about these email and text communications? Challenges, things you want to push back on? Celeste has a question, comment.
I do want to ask, are you sending things differently to parents and teens? Do you communicate with teens only through text? Are you, if you send the article, are you sending it to both populations? I'm just curious about that piece.
I do.
Pre and post, that go to everybody? Those things.
So I typically start with just parents on the emails, and then I ask the teens, I tell the teens I'm emailing your parents, do you also want to be included on the emails? If I'm doing, I ask the parents for permission to text their teens on enrollment forms. And if so, what's your teen's phone number? And then I can feel comfortable texting the teens directly, like here's an article, here's a link, here's a whatever. But if I don't have parental permission to have that kind of text, with their teens, I also set up, there are so many portals for like 2 cents a text so that my cell phone number is not what the teens get. They're getting it from a texting service, right? There's, Reminder does this, and
yeah, it's way too late for that since COVID. Like the whole congregation has my phone number because I didn't look up before.
But it's something to consider, right? Like so that the teens don't, but I get permission to text them and then I'll text them separate. If not, everything goes back through the parent. Great. Celeste, you had a question?
The question I had was, how do you create an email that parents are going to read? For example, we meet at different shuls in the area. They'll go to the wrong shul, but they'll go through the 80 pictures I post and like everyone that their kid is in. So what's that balance? Because I feel like, I don't know, this is something that I struggle with. Because I can have an email with like 17 bullet points like here, and I'm good at that, and it's these things. But like I said, they show up to the wrong shul, but when it comes to their picture, that's the 78th, they like that one because their kid's in there.
So it's always a challenge. When I start out with the personal introductions, and if I can do it by phone, then I specifically say to the parents, I'm going to be emailing you a lot. And here are the kinds of things I'm going to be emailing you. Please, you are my partner in this. Like, I try to use this partner language. You are my partner in this. We're in this together. Please read your emails. I can't force them to, right? So that's one. The other thing is sending a text message to, like, if I send an email, like if my session's Sunday and I send an email to parents on Monday, I may text them on Thursday to say, please make sure you read Monday's email. Sometimes it works, and here's the link, here's the whatever. I can't guarantee it, but at least I know I've gone that extra 2 steps to try to push them, remind them to do it. I know there's a lot on their plate, but again, that introductory conversation about you're my partner, that's a big thing.
I mean, I've had parents literally say to me, I'm not good. I don't read emails. I'm never going to see your email. And so I'm planning to use a texting system next year and getting their permission, but you can't communicate in the same way. You can't send, it's very short. It has to be very concise. So it's frustrating.
The only other thing you could do is if you use something like MailChimp, you can actually text them the link. So all they have to do is click on the link. I mean, it's so dumb because if they just click on the link in their email, I mean, whatever. But if everybody communicates differently, but I kind of just set it up ahead. There's no guarantee. And we'd all be happier if we didn't have to deal with the parents in this, but we do.
But I think also too, like being consistent, like the program Sunday, Wednesday, you'll get an email.
Right.
You'll get a text at this time. So that helps too, I think.
Right. And I'm going to be sending you, ancillary information that helps you as a parent, right? Setting up that relationship. Okay. So we're running short on time. I'm going to kind of breeze again. I'm going to give this to Erica. She can post it. So you guys have this, but there's lots of data in the Jewish world about the importance of ritual and what it does to build identity for teens and kids and family units. And the vast majority of ritual in Jewish life does not take place in the synagogue. It takes place in the home, whether it's Shabbat or Passover, or lighting Hanukkah candles, whatever, it's saying Kaddish, it's Yartzites, whatever. This is all sorts of data, primarily from 2 sources that I pulled, about the role that home ritual plays in identity. Most parents don't feel confident in executing those home rituals. And they don't feel comfortable customizing them. So there is data about the importance of being able to cut this Prel quote. They want to make it personal and meaningful. And therefore we have to say to them, like, on Friday nights, it's customary to say this particular blessing to your children. But if you're not comfortable with that, here's 2 or 3 different ways that you could bless your child without using the formal blessing. Customize it for your own family, or share your family tradition around X. Right. And so giving them permission to customize it, it gives them much more authorship of the process. So that's home rituals. Adult learning. A lot of these can be done virtually. One is parent book groups. And either the book group is on Jewish topics somehow related to the theme that you're teaching their teens, or it's a parenting resource, right? So the go-to that everybody did years ago was like Wendy Mogul, like Blessing of a Skin Knee, that kind of a thing. But then like we kind of stopped doing it, right? So thinking about parent book groups, or even a set of articles. It doesn't have to be a whole book. It could be 5 or 6 articles on the same topic that you want to bring them together to read about. One is partnering with your local Jewish family career service, Jewish family services, whatever it's called, to set up parenting support groups for teenagers, parents of teenagers. And it could be on anything from like eating disorders to substances to just parenting through adolescence, puberty, managing, self-disclosure. My nephew and his sending pictures to girls that he shouldn't be sending. And my brother and sister-in-law, like, how do we deal with this so he doesn't end up in jail? Parents are dealing with all that. How do we, we cannot shut down their technology 100%. They need it for school. And so how, if I'm going to ground them from technology, but they have a school laptop and they're required to be on it, how do I navigate that? So partnering with JFNCS for parenting support groups with your name, your logo, is a way to engage the parents. Parallel education programs could be the same content, just on their level, that it's ongoing, like every week the parents are in one room, and you don't bring them together, but you bring them together every 4 weeks. It could be tangential. So, you know, if you're studying life cycle with kids and you're focusing on, you know, bris and baby naming and bar bat mitzvah and wedding, maybe you're looking at death, you know, with the parents, right? Because they're the middle generation and they're dealing with this with their own parents and writing wills and navigating Jewish burial. Or it could be any topic of Jewish learning for them. The other idea is parent-led moods, where you engage the parents in your community of expertise on anything to lead one-shot parent-led mood sessions. So we elevate them as teachers, and it also helps the kids see them that way. I just want to check the chat box real quick. Text is great.
In for a sec.
Yeah.
So two things. One, I think with JFS or JFNCS, parenting support groups, I think there are also private parenting coaches out there who could certainly help to work with you, especially who are, you know, Jewish educators, and there are people like that. So if you want more information about that, feel free to reach out. And in the time of COVID, I've been leading a parent support group on Wednesday mornings. And one of the things that we've talked about recently was watching Netflix series with either with your kid or separately from your kid, or watching them and then coming together as parents to talk about what's going on. So there are a ton of programs now, Sex Education, Big Mouth, The Society, lots of teen-centric Netflix programs that really do have some very interesting lessons that we can learn as parents and then bring them back to our family systems, but that would be really beneficial to be able to discuss with other parents. So it's kind of like a book group, but now in, you know, a technological / you know, Netflix-y kind of way.
Awesome. And again, even if you like, you be the teen expert. If there's like a one-shot Law and Order episode that you saw that you think would be great for the parents to see and then discuss with their kids, send that to text it. I saw this Law and Order episode. The focus is this. It's a great discussion topic for you and your kids. We're going to have a parent meeting about it ahead of time, et cetera. I know we're short on time, so I want to move forward. Can we just take a temperature if people have another like 6 or 7 minutes so we can do the Think, Pair, Share, or if not, we'll just wrap up. Can people give us another 10 minutes? No. Okay, so we're going to skip the Think, Pair, Share. Basically, I just want you to think, you know, about what of any of these parent engagement tools you might change the culture of your program. I am going to ask before you go to pick one of the 3 of these things to put in the chat box. Either here's an aha moment I had today, here's a start, stop, continue, or investigate further of something I heard today, or rate today, you know, on a 1 through 5. I didn't achieve anything, I didn't learn anything, I'm walking away, zooming out with the same perception, or 5, I'm excited, I learned a lot. I just want to kind of get a end of the road feedback from people into your chat box. More time. You always want to hear that. Great. Email tips, follow-up emails. Great. Get a couple more of these and then we'll say Lahitraot. Asking about texting teens. Always ask that ahead of time. The aha of mixing teens with other parents. Great. Okay, perfect. If you all, this is my contact information. Let me put this up as your post-program emails. Excellent. Great. So, perfect. Yeah, using MailChimp. And again, you can spy on them with MailChimp, who opened it, who didn't, and then they can't lie to you and say I didn't see it. It's great. Perfect. So here's my contact information. Feel free to contact me at any point. Like, I'm working on this. Can you brainstorm with me? Or can you take a look at this? I'm happy to always be a resource. You know, as Erica said, she and I were part of Nachas going back, I don't know, 18 years or so. I saw Fred on here, which is great because Fred was one of the OGs with us. So great to see Fred on here too. You know, this has always been my community. So even if I'm not, and like I said, I teach too. Even though I consult, I've always taught. I always am a practitioner first. And so I'm dealing with this directly with teens and parents myself. So anything I can be helpful with, please let me know.
Thank you, Robyn. We appreciate your expertise. We appreciate the fact that this just flows off the tip of your tongue, and your examples and your suggestions were really meaningful and helpful. And again, please reach out to myself. Please reach out to Robyn. We'll get everything posted on Facebook, on the J-Teen website, and we'll definitely see Robyn in the community again soon.
Absolutely. Everybody stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Bye.